When it comes to woke movements and how they target and destroy property through riots that have often been described to us as fiery but peaceful protests, you will often see people labeled as conspiracy theorists for pointing out the corporate entities behind these movements and how they profit from this. An example of this is how when BLM and Antifa were rioting, most of the destruction took place in areas that belonged to people of low income or people who were lower middle class. Because of course, when everything settles down, swoops in the corporate interests that were involved in encouraging these riots quickly to rebuild the areas and, let's be honest, gentrify them. Not to mention continue the process of uglification as they let these rioters remove and destroy all things traditional and replace them with postmodern atrocities. Often, the conspiracy theorists mention organizations such as BlackRock and their involvement in these projects, and interestingly, they do not keep this to a local or national level, but in fact talk about how this process is extended to the broader international world. Because these conflict-starting so-called revolutionary entities not only exist at home, but also in all parts of the world. While at home, the process of rebuilding is often triggered by the actions of rioters and arson attacks, in the wider world, it is often the result of full-scale wars, which means a lot more building and a lot more profit. Wars that often start due to the actions of trigger-happy Islamo-Marxist alliances such as Hamas. On a side note, it's often interesting, sad, and hilarious at the same time when I go online and see pictures of what Gaza looked like before and what it looks like now, which is quite literally the opposite of the narrative that we are sold all the time, that Gaza is nothing more than a prison and a bunch of refugee camps. The left-wing doublethink is truly a sight to behold. But enough of that rant, let's return to the subject at hand, which is of course Donald Trump's announcement of taking over and rebuilding Gaza. The moment I heard this in the news, the first thing that came to my mind was the aforementioned conspiracy theories, the corporations causing the problems and then coming up with the solutions. Though a lot of this was not even on my bingo card, regardless of what part of the political spectrum you fall on, if you think America was not going to be involved in spearheading Gaza's reconstruction, you are truly delulu. The fact of the matter is, even if President Trump was not the president right now, America would have made the same announcement, but maybe reframe it as America paying some sort of reparations. And let's not forget how many pro-Palestine protesters were actually asking the Biden administration for some intervention. For some reason, people forget that this is what American intervention looks like. Now, Donald Trump, though he has promised no new wars and ending wokeism, has never shied away from creating international sources of income for the United States. It was one of his strengths in his first term. It's one of the reasons he's been re-elected, so there's no reason for us to be pulling a surprised Pikachu face. Now, Trump has alluded to other countries helping out with the rebuilding process, and I think people really underestimate the interest of other countries in this prime real estate.
It's free real estate.
Not to mention, Gaza can actually provide access to the Mediterranean Sea, which connects the Middle East to Africa and Europe, which I think will have more long-term importance to US and its trade allies. Now, as some of you know, I'm not quite a pro-Palestine guy. That said, I do have a couple of issues with this whole situation. First of all, the idea of relocating people from Gaza. The nearest so-called allies that the people of Gaza have are Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan. But as much as they like to virtue signal using the Palestinian cause, the truth is they're really not going to be interested in having some Palestinians relocate into their regions because they've had problems with them before, and not to mention it was sort of Jordan's fault that Israel now occupies the West Bank. Now, in my opinion, the US and their allies who want to rebuild Gaza should be able to provide temporary housing within Gaza itself as they progressively rebuild the region into whatever trade hub they're hoping it becomes. Though I do understand the challenge of trying to separate the more well-meaning folk living in Gaza from the more militaristic aspect of it. On the subject of relocation, however, the much bigger issue I've got is, well, it seems as if Trump's suggesting he's not going to allow the people back into Gaza.
What the hell is even that?
Sure, he said that for Jewish settlers as well, but the relocation of the people of Gaza not being temporary, in my personal opinion, is stupidity. Not only do I feel that the people of Gaza, after proper security vetting, should be allowed back into Gaza, but I think they should be part of the workforce of whatever trade hub Trump is planning in Gaza. In fact, something that people seem to forget is that there are thousands of people in Gaza who actually used to go to Israel for work. And Hamas's actions on the 7th of October have truly devastated these people's households. Not to mention that, like every country in the world, there is a poor populace there who have very little to do with the wider politics of the region. And though I don't really trust the death toll numbers that come out of the Palestinian Authority's mouth, I don't think anybody denies that in every war there are a lot of innocent casualties. I also think Trump should push for some kind of sovereign national identity for the region and its people, even if it is some kind of puppet state, to end the Middle Eastern conflict once and for all. Sure, the authorities there have refused two-state solutions before. I think this time around, because of the power of social media, if they reject another solution, I think the hypocrisy will be much more visible to the people. I also think such a solution will be most beneficial. Port cities have historically been known to progress very fast and become hubs of diverse people and ideas. And more importantly, it will prevent Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and UNRWA from misusing the perpetual refugee status for political purposes and, of course, the cash cow that it is. That said, one does wonder whether or not there are members in the Palestinian Authority, UNRWA, or even Hamas who were made aware of Trump's plans during the recent ceasefire negotiations. If they didn't, well, expect more conflict in the coming days. Interestingly, if the United States president does have so much power over the region, it does make you wonder why this conflict has gone on for so long. And for all the useful idiots who went around celebrating the so-called revolution that began on the 7th of October, who kept shouting that Gaza is an open-air prison and a horrible place to live at, which interestingly is exactly the reasoning being given by Trump, and of course encouraged Hamas to keep fighting and hold on to the hostages. Congratulations, y'all played yourselves. Well, those were my opinions on this somewhat complicated situation. Don't forget to subscribe to Tenebral Gaming, and remember, your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer.